All right, hey traders, TG Watkins here. It is April 13th, so we've got a short week this week. It's Wednesday, and we have Friday off. It's a market holiday, Good Friday. So we got that going on. Let's see if we can angle this camera just down a little bit there. All right, so uh, anybody out there who doesn't know anything about me and want to check out more information, come over here to profitpilot.com, and then you can also go over to services, and that's where you can find out more about my trading room and the classes that I put out and any other material that we work with. All right, so let's get into the markets. And so far, what I've been guiding ever since we've had this pretty big short squeeze, I think that's mostly what that was. As I said, broke some records. It was like the longest 11 or 12 day streak in recent history over the last 20, 30, 40 years, something like that. And at some point, I was like, this thing is pretty overbought. We're going to have to see this thing come down at some point. And so it happened right up here at that third ATR. It also happened on the Russia-Ukraine peace talk news. So that was a buy the news, sell the rumor kind of thing, or sell the rumor, buy the news. And that was pretty much the peak. So once that started to roll over, we started shorting some more items and tickers, and we shorted the SPXS, or it went long that. And at this point, I was targeting the daily 50. Now we've gotten there. We've gotten just below there. And at this point, I kind of figured that the daily 50 is going to be some sort of support. Now, I don't think that we're going to really see price take off. Like, PFE was one of the examples that I was using, Pfizer. So you could see that it pulled back to its daily 50 and then had a pretty big move to the upside. And that actually held here with the 15-minute time frame. However, this was shortly lived, partly because there was a big gap right here on the hourly chart. And I'm still wondering if Pfizer is eventually going to roll back over, because this is, for now, an inverse trampoline move. So what I always talk about this is, with an inverse trampoline move, is that price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0. And so, yes, there can be long moves while that condition exists. But what you should know is that that condition is active and aware that it's going on, such that you don't necessarily think that this thing's really going to work out in a big way unless we start seeing some support on the lower time frames, and unless the Moxie indicator does cross over 0, and unless price continues to hold those moving averages. Just be prepared that while you're in this condition, that up moves can kind of be fake or fake outs, something to that extent. So that's mostly what I would say about being aware of those situations. So that's why, if we look at the SPY, and we kind of have that same thing going on. This is what I'm a little bit concerned about, at least for the upside. So if anybody's kind of thinking they want to go long in this market, at least for the indexes, I'm like, I kind of see that, yeah, we might spend some time here digesting that potential support, that moving average. I mean, it's a fairly big, large moving average for what a lot of traders consider to be support or not support. So yeah, there's going to be a bit of a battle going on right there. The other thing is, if we look left, and you see this, there's a bit of congestion and a bit of congestion right there. So it makes sense that we're going to probably spend a few days here. And it would be interesting to see if maybe neither the Bulls nor the Bears win going into this 3-day weekend. That's something to think about. That, if we're kind of neutral going into the 3-day weekend, then okay, we're neutral. So just kind of make sure you think about that as far as possibilities of what the market might be up to for the next couple days, or day and a half, I guess, at this point. The only other thing that I was saying is, it seemed to me we're probably getting a little bit oversold. We're starting to kind of put some gaps in through here, and it's been a while since we've touched the hourly 50, that kind of thing. And even the 15-minute Moxie, you could see the Moxie indicator was starting to move up a little bit like this. And so I'm like, yeah, probably gonna bounce a little bit, digest that, and just give it some time. So hopefully, if anybody's trading options, you've built that into your situation as far as how long the duration of your options trade. And then the other thing I'm looking at as far as lack of strength, like why I'm saying I don't really think that there's going to be a huge bounce or anything, is the Moxie indicators on the 15-minute time frame, not very strong. Like they're not saying much. They're kind of trending up, but they're still below 0. They're spread. There's just no strength there. And even the 15-minute 50 is still in a downtrend. So I'm not really worried about anything right there as far as a bounce of any sort. And if we look at the Nasdaq, it was looking a little bit more oversold, but it is also weaker, so that makes sense. And you can see the same thing is kind of getting a little bit away from the moving averages on that daily chart, but it is still in an inverse trampoline move, a little bit of a distance between price and the 50, and you could see the same thing where the Moxie indicator is trending up, but this is not strong. You want to see something strong? This is stronger. That's a good situation. If you have the Moxie indicator and you're working with it and you see something like that, that means that you've got some strength in that direction because they look like one line. They basically agree with each other. And what you can see currently, this isn't very strong. So I'm not going to be putting much weight or emphasis on a sort of bounce or move up or whatever. It could just be trading sideways, flagging into resistance, more like that. So right now, I'm mostly considering the market to kind of be in noise and all that kind of stuff. All right, let's see. And then UVXY, it's another one I look at. And if we look here on the daily chart, actually, let me move it over to here because I want to show you the last couple situations. So what you'll be noticing, big picture, and actually let me just clean this one up right here. So big picture, we can see that the UVXY has basically double bottomed. It doesn't really want to go lower. And I think that's a big thing to note about the overall sentiment of the market. The UVXY seems to have been basing for quite some time and seems to me like it's getting ready for something. So we'll just have to see what that's going to end up being. And the other thing, if we look a little bit closer, this pattern, and this pattern all seem to be about the same. This is why I'm not going to be too worried about my position with the UVXY. If it chops around a little bit, that's fine. It's just going to be some noise until it gets going, which I think is going to be to the upside with the UVXY. And you can see that if you just kind of handle some chop, you get a big pop. And if you just handle some chop, you get a big pop. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to handle some chop, and I think we're going to get a big pop. So again, that kind of helps give my direction for the overall market and what to be expecting. All right, so yeah, that pretty much covers that. Mr. Murphy, yeah, good. Okay, I covered UVXY for you. Let's take a look at USO. Yeah, so USO, this thing I've been talking about, I've been relating it to gold. Gold had a similar move, just that it went so high, really high, and it went outside of its ranges and all this kind of stuff, and it was too overbought. Well, it needed to calm down. But I wouldn't have said, hey, let's short it. I think clearly this thing is an uptrend. We know what's going on with the economy. We know what's going on out there with inflation. We are in a bull market for some of these names, and I think oil is one of them, especially if you go look at individual oil names. So the only thing I was saying is we're going to have to find the right time for that. And I kind of figured that the daily 50 was going to be about that. But I needed to see it start to set up on the lower time frames. And what we could see was it started to set up here on the 15. You can see the Moxie indicator was starting to come across. And here's the double bottom. And now you can see that the Moxie indicator is getting much tighter, right? So what I was saying about the S&P with the two Moxie indicators not being very tight, well, look at this. This is much tighter, and look at the move that we're getting out of it. So that's what I was looking at. And I would imagine, yeah, at this point, USO probably going to keep going up. We'll have to see if it can continue to follow those moving averages. But overall, it looks good, and it's come back in, especially on the weekly time frame. It's come back in from being very overbought and started to come into some strength. If you look at GLD, you'll basically see the same thing. Now, we entered GLD right there. So that was a pretty good setup. Look at that Moxie indicator. Look how tight that was. That's the kind of stuff we want to see if we want to take a nice trade, or if we want to see that the trend is starting to strengthen and solidify. That looks really good. And then we could see here that price started to follow those moving averages and all that. And so we jumped in. Now, of course, nothing goes in a straight line. So there are probably going to be some pullbacks at some point for GLD. Let's see. It's starting to get a little bit pulled away from some of the moving averages. So it's getting a little bit up there. So unless it really just starts to explode, I would imagine that there's going to be another pullback to find another entry. We can add more if we want to. But I think that this thing is beginning its uptrend, just kind of like USO is doing after it took a few weeks. I guess about a little over a month, actually, of just going sideways and digesting. One of the other things, I was looking at wheat the other day, yesterday, and not something I'm going to be trading, but you can see basically the same thing as oil, gold, again, commodities, these commodities that have had just really crazy moves, super straight up. Nothing goes up forever like this. At some point, they become way too vertical and they're going to come back down. And you can see that I wouldn't short it, but you can see it basically went sideways until it started to find some support. And that support apparently was right there. You can see it right in through the hourly chart. Started to got over the 50, tested the 50. And then we could see, not the clearest, this one was actually kind of messy, but you could see the Moxie indicator got kind of tight right there. And that was the beginning of that first move and pull back and then continue. So again, commodities are kind of the place to be if you need to be bullish. Otherwise, I think a lot of things are wearing out and moving to the downside, especially tech. All right, so we got that. Speaking of tech, AMD, not looking strong, right? Now, perhaps this thing's getting a little bit oversold. Kind of like what I was saying about the Nasdaq. You can see it's gotten a little bit stretched here, and it's at that lower range. And maybe there's a bounce, maybe there's a flag, something to that extent. This wouldn't be the most ideal place to get short on something like this. And yeah, if you guys are going to be asking me which about tickers and stuff, include which direction, because this market is so bifurcated. I don't know if you guys are going to be looking long or short for something like this, like AMD. I don't know if you're like, yeah, look at this thing, it's going to keep going lower. And I'm like, it might bounce first. Or you're like, hey, this thing is super oversold. I'm going to buy it because I'm looking for a bounce. Those are two different stories. So I'm not sure if I would want to really play a bounce, because a bounce, if you look at, let me show you this, AutoNation. So this is why you got to be careful about trying to play a bounce in this kind of market. Is yes, it got really oversold, kind of like AMD, right? Got way out there, got way beyond those moving averages, big gap. And you could see, yep, there was a bounce. But if you weren't quick, what happened to that bounce? It came right back down to where it was before. So this is the point of what I'm trying to say. Be careful about trying to catch bounces in a downtrend, because it's still in a downtrend. If anything, maybe you look too short bounces. That's a possibility too. So that's why this market is pretty tough, is because we're getting big moves in both directions. It just kind of depends on what you're looking at. All right, so let's see. Costco. Costco's been on a tear, and I've been trying to think about what some of the reasons for this are. Walmart, Costco, Target even a little bit. And I was kind of thinking maybe it has to do with inflation. And because inflation is going up, and so everything else is going up, the cost of everything is going up, that maybe what's happening are people are starting to shop, or, the thought is investors are thinking that places like Walmart, which we know is super cheap, and Costco, which sells in bulk, maybe these places are going to be doing well business wise because, well, people need to save money. And so they're going to go to places where their dollar goes further. Look at Dollar Tree, look at Dollar General. Those things have been doing pretty well recently. So that's my thought. Now, it seems like it could keep going, but it probably needs a break first. So I'm looking at this. You can see it hit that outer range on the daily charts, had a pretty good run, but it looks to me like it's going to take a bit of a breather. You can see here it had a really good run and then needed to take a breather. So I wouldn't be surprised that this thing basically needs to take a breather. Part of what I'm seeing this is price going up, and the Moxie indicator has kind of been flat. So in a way, that is basically the equivalent of the divergence, negative divergence, lack of support. Here, I actually forgot to go into one of my rooms. So hang on just a second. So yeah, I would be careful about considering a long right there. I think it's a little bit late to the party, and I would be looking for a better opportunity to be getting into something like that. So that would be Costco. Let's see, what else are you guys looking at? All right, Mark, not really sure what you're saying about whatever we're talking about the Forex, so we'll just kind of go with that one. Let's see, AMGN, long, kind of the same thing as Costco. I think you need to take, I think it's going to take a break. Look at where it is. It's up here at the outer ranges. Typically, you see price take a little bit of a break when it gets up there. So it's had a good move. And if you were thinking of initiating a move up here or initiating along, you're kind of coming late to the party. So it can keep going higher, but I would be looking for a better opportunity. And I don't think that opportunity is right now. I understand it is down here at the hourly 50, but it's also way, way, way up there. So Anders, thanks. I'm glad you really like the Moxie indicator, but basically it is a momentum-based indicator. What we're trying to do is calculate the rate of acceleration or deceleration of price. And we do that on a variety of time frames, and that's basically how we do it. And then because I grew up looking at all this stuff and the mentors that I would listen to and learn from, all their indicators were basically squiggly lines like that. The stochastic's just a squiggly line. It never really worked for me. I couldn't see well enough about when the line was actually turning or changing, or if it was getting bigger or smaller. I couldn't tell. And so what I did is I had the programmers, when I was building this, I said, what else can we do about this? And so we basically turned the squiggly line into blocks, and that you could see more of a stair step situation. So this is much, much clearer to see. I can see when there's a lot of acceleration because those stair steps are very, very big. And I can see when the acceleration changes direction because it goes from red to green and green to red. Then the other time I can see, gosh, let me see if it, then I can, like, if I look at Bloom energy, I can see when the energy is very lackluster, because right here, you can see that it goes red, green, and it's also operating right around 0. That's a whole lot clearer than, say, a squiggly line that's kind of barely moving. Yeah. So the clarity, I'm telling you, those blocks, it's like a picture's worth 1,000 words, and that's what's kind of going on right and through there. All right. So Lulu, yeah, I'm short Lulu. That's a pretty big move up through there. It's going a little bit further than I want, but I am still going to hang on to it because, number one, I wouldn't really want to be initiating along there for the same reason I talked about Costco and Amgen. I would not want to be initiating along up there. It's outside of the outer boundaries. And the other thing is, I like my 50, 200, 50 maneuver. And right now, it is at the 200. That should be resistance. Now, it might take some time, but that should be resistance. Let me show you some other examples. If we look at, let's see, plug. This is the one I've been talking about most recently. Notice how plug did the same thing. It pushed past the 200, but ultimately the 200 was resistance and it came back down. And you could also see here how it hit that outer boundary. How about another one that we traded and had to hang on to this one for a little bit? And what you'll see, look at expr. You can see, just like Lulu, it came up here to the 200, pulled back, and then went outside the 200, and then it careened on back down. So this is one of the benefits, I think, of why I like to trade stock. And I think that I don't have to worry about a timeline. I don't have to worry about theta. I don't have to worry about stuff like that with options. I can pick a position. I can say, ultimately, I think this is where it's going to go. I think Lululemon is going to go down to the daily 50. And you know what? If there's going to be some noise in between and I don't have my timing quite right, that's fine. I got stock. Doesn't matter. And you know what? If it keeps going up like this and then I start to see a break, if I really want to get aggressive, then I can add more right there when it starts to break the other direction. So that's what I'm looking at. In fact, this looks a whole lot like Lululemon. And funny enough, they're both clothing stores. So Lululemon Express sure looks a lot like it. And if we go back to Lulu, yeah, looks just like it. So I'm not going to be too worried about it. It seems like, just kind of doing that thing. And I imagine at some point it's going to break and come back down there. So no big deal. And when I see that it starts to break the other way, I'll add more. But I definitely wouldn't want to be going long. I think I would be, it's not a good place to go long. So if I don't want to go long, then I don't want to get out of my short. So Ray God, if you order the indicator, if you get the Moxie indicator, you get the Moxie indicator. These other ones, the Squeeze Pro, you have to pay for, but they have the regular Squeeze, which is for free. So you can pick that up for free. The Stochastic is for free. And then I'm also using Sam. He's also one of our traders. His high-low. It's a oscillator in the same way that the Stochastic is. You could start out with the Stochastic, and if you like that, then you could upgrade to something like the Pro. So most of these indicators you can get for free one way or another, except for the Moxie indicator. And then there you go. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing. So yeah, thanks, Amran. That's the other thing. You guys will notice that 90% of the time, I really only talk about the Moxie indicator. The Squeeze is there to let me know when there's some consolidation, but basically I can eyeball that too. And then as far as the stochastic and the high-low, I like to see where it is, but it doesn't make my decisions. The Moxie indicator and the moving averages make my decisions. So I view them as all kind of ancillary and all that stuff. David, let's see, crowd. I think, yeah, crowd and Lulu are basically the same thing. So I think you just saw my explanation for Lulu, and I think that crowd is going to be the same way. These things are pushing, yeah, sure, but I don't have to worry about that because I'm in stock. And you know, right now I don't actually have a position on here. Yesterday when I was in the Moxie room and I was talking to you guys about this, I was paper trading it. But even as paper trade, it's stock. I don't have to worry about theta or anything like that. So yes, I would still be bearish this. I'm still targeting at least the daily 50 for this move at some point when it comes back around. And I'd be looking at this saying, you know what? That looks like an inverse trampoline move to me. So yeah, I'm not too worried about that. If we look at, I think MDB, kind of give you a bit of an example. Yes, it's bouncing up a little bit, but same kind of deal. I look at these as being similar, kind of in their patterns and shapes. And you can see here, you know, it did get past the 200, but came back down. Now I'd like to see this get rejected at the 200. It could push past a little bit, but ultimately it looks to me like it's going to get rejected by the underside of a downtrending hourly 50. Same thing with the underside of a downtrending 15-minute 200. And I think the daily 50 is probably going to go well below the daily 50, but we're going to have to wait for the market to do this. You know, what we're noticing, if we go back to the SPY, what we're noticing is we're having a little bit of an up day, you know, a little bit of a reprieve from yesterday's washout down like that. So I think we're seeing, because the market is up, names that are already kind of up in an up position are catching a bid. So crowd, Lulu, that's fine, you know, but that example that I showed you with Express, I think give it enough time, it's going to peter out, it's going to roll back over. I think the market's going to roll back over. So all these things, we're just going to have to give it a little bit of time until they work out the direction that I want. All right, let me check the other one. Simon, I just saw that you asked about Lulu, so same answer on that one. And then let's see, EZA, pair trade, South Africa. So long on this one. Yeah, okay, but I think you need to give it a moment because this one's a little bit choppy, so kind of tough. You can see here before it took about three taps into that low into the daily 50 before it turned up again, and you could just barely see a little bit of divergence. This one's a little bit tougher to really see. The only other thing that I'm noticing is that price actually is looking like it's getting rejected by the underside of the hourly 50, whereas in through here it did not get rejected. And maybe right here it got rejected, but it then got right back there and found support. So I wouldn't want to buy it here. It looks to me like it's probably going to do a little bit more pullback. So I would give this one a little bit more opportunity. The Moxie indicator also looks particularly worse off. That looks worse. That looks worse than say this or this, because it's actually, there's a lot more red going on there. So I think EZA long, going to have to wait a little bit longer. And then EWT, yeah, that looks like a short. So yeah, that one looks fine to the short side. Doing just fine on the short side there. You know, find some bounces to short into, but look at that. That was an inverse trampoline move. Moxie price above the 50, Moxie indicator below 0. And same thing like Lulu and Express and CrowdStrike. You can see how price kind of pushed past the 200 for a little bit and then rolled over. And you can see even here had a little bit of a bounce and then rolled over. So again, tops are messy. Tops take a long time to kind of turn around because people want to keep going up, and then, you know, they just kind of wear out their momentum before rolling over. So just tops are messy. They take some time. Again, I think that's one of the benefits of me being a stock trader. I don't have to worry about that. And I could just say, yeah, I think this is going to go this direction and hit this target at some point, and then I just sit on it. And even through here, you could see price bounced up into the underside of a downtrending hourly 200. So yeah, that looks like a pretty good short. Just find the right opportunities. Amit, yeah, we just talked about crowd, so that's another one. Yeah, I still think all that is. And then I'm gonna wrap this up in just a minute because I have to go into the options room. But IPI, you know, I look at this one and honestly, it's pretty pretty high up there. It seems awfully extended. I kind of don't know what to do with it, and I would try and see if there's a dip to buy because it is darn extended. So one thing I want to, as we wrap up here, just want to let you guys know that if you are interested, oops, I didn't want that. If you guys are interested in following more about me, you can come over to profitpilot.com, which is the one I always talk about. We got Facebook, we got Twitter, and then we got Instagram. So come join me on the socials. You can stay in tune. You can see when I'm doing a class or anything else like that, any promos, any market updates, which if you go to profitpilot.com, I did a market update, gosh, about 2.5 weeks ago at this point. And so far, I think it's been pretty spot on. So go check that out, and hopefully you guys enjoy.